You already have a successful business, but have you thought about starting a podcast? I get this question all the time. Should you or should you not do it? The answer is an unequivocal yes, you should. You're listening to one right now, and I'm super excited to have one of the co-founders of Squadcast here, Rockwell Felder. He's also the host of his own show, and we're going to be talking about how to record a great podcast remotely. I'm going to bring him up right after we thank our sponsor. How would you like to grow your wealth easier than you think with the change you probably don't notice anyhow automatically? That's why I started the compounding interest snowball investing with Acorns and advise you do too. Get started simply and easily today at eainterviews.com/acorns. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Rockwell Felder. How you doing, Rock?
I'm great, Mario. Thanks for having me on the show.
I'm excited to dive right in because you have a very unique perspective. And I just want to ask you, should you start a podcast?
I'm a big fan of podcasting. I've been a fan of podcasting for over a decade now, working on Squadcasts intimately with podcasters since 2016. So yes, but I'm definitely a little biased, but I'm a big fan and believer in the power of podcasting.
You and me both. But what I want to dive into is, how do you record a great podcast and how do you do it remotely? Because no matter what's going on in the world, there's people who think you need to go into a studio. You need to bring people to your studio. Oh, it's going to be cool. It's going to be all kinds of things. You know, we can have beverages and snacks and record. And all we need to do is plug in a mic to the laptop. And while you can do that, there's some bottlenecks with always having to be somewhere with someone, and I like the fact that there's this remote option. Why do you think that's so powerful?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how Squadcast came to be and where our journey starts, which I'm happy to unpack a little bit more. But basically, we didn't think that everybody was going to have the option to record their conversations, whether it's an interview or it's a like an audio fiction where there's different roles. We didn't think that everybody was going to be able to do it in the same room, but that they're still going to want to have the ability to record it in the highest sound quality possible, especially as our bet was that podcasting, even though in 2016 it still wasn't as popular and as mainstream as maybe I thought it should be, I still felt very strongly like it was going on that path. It was just a matter of time. But I've also experienced as a listener to podcasts and talking with other people who are fans of podcasting that it always comes up that, hey, we should be recording this, or we should make a podcast, or you should make a podcast. And I just remember when Zach approached me, who is my partner and co-founder of Squadcast, when he approached me about the idea for Squadcast. That's why it was really easy for me to get excited about, because again, I was a big fan and listener of podcasting, but also had thought that more people are going to want to create it. Not everybody's going to be like Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss or all the greats that you can think of, where they can fly in people into their studios, but that they're still going to want to create that content, and it still should sound good. Because the other problem that we saw is a lot of people were using Skype when we first entered the space, which is a great tool for video chat, but it wasn't really built with the intent of capturing that audio in the best sound quality possible. And so that's where we really saw our opportunity, is that no one was really catering and building tools specifically for creators to create content at the highest sound quality possible. And what we've learned through this journey, because even though I was a fan and listener of a podcast, both Zach and I came into the space this way, we still really didn't know what it entailed to be a creator and a host of a podcast, producer, any of that stuff. So through our efforts to really engage with the community and learn from them, we have learned that it doesn't have to be very difficult to record a great sounding conversation remotely. And yes, we think that tools like software tools like Squadcast are a great addition to your workflow. There's a lot of other things you can do that maybe aren't as intuitive. Yes, a great sounding microphone or headphones are important, but there's also a lot of other things that you can do, such as room treatment or how you use those tools. We've seen a lot of people where their audio quality is simply fixed just by microphone technique being improved, which is, again, not intuitive if you're not like coming from a radio background or just an audio background, which a lot of podcasters are. We're kind of coming into this space with really just a lot of passion and maybe some experience, but we're still learning a lot on the go. So that's where we see our role to play in the space, is helping podcasters, whether they're just starting their journey or they're a pro who's looking to up their game or use a different remote recording service. We really see it as our opportunity to educate and help people get the most out of a remote studio experience.
So you're giving a lot of great expert authority insights there. You're talking about the mic, you're talking about the room treatment, the software. So I'm going to have some fun with this, and I know the focus of your software is high quality recording. So let me ask you this question. Does it matter what mic I have if I'm using your software? Will it fix any mic that goes in there?
It's a great question, and you don't need any external microphones or devices to record on Squadcast. However, having a mic is always going to be helpful, specifically if you're buying one that's for spoken word or for like podcast related. So very different than what you would use for maybe singing or something like that. Exactly, for vocal. So what we recommend is a dynamic microphone. There's a lot of good options that you don't have to break the bank on. However, again, if you do spend more money on a microphone, it could work. It could make your voice sound better, and we don't want to discourage that. What I see a common hang up and what we do try to help podcasters avoid is getting hung up on the microphone, thinking that the microphone is going to be the difference maker between your podcast getting recognized or not. And that's simply not true. Yes, you should sound good. And I think it's very important that you're taking quality seriously if you are researching a microphone. But if that's getting in the way of you actually producing the content, that's the tough job. That's the real job of the podcaster. And so many of us companies, whether we're on the hardware or software side, like, we're trying to help you not worry about that stuff. We don't want you worried about the software when it comes to recording your show remotely. You should just be focused on having a great conversation with that guest and enjoying that moment that's being captured in time. But that's the hard part.
I agree 100%. And even when I was setting up my studio, and my background's in video mainly, but with that, you could say it's a background in audio too, because if you have video and the audio is crap on it, the whole thing is, I've always used this example. Imagine watching Transformers, Die Hard, Jurassic Park on mute. Is it the same movie? The answer is no. It's always audio is number one. But in the same thing, I didn't want to have to, as much as I love my crew and we've done really cool shoots on location, I didn't want to have to set up lights, set up all the stuff that we do, set up the wires, set up the microphone, set up this. And I don't want to say just to record a conversation, because it's totally worth it. I fully believe that, but I was aiming 5-10 years down the line. When I'm past 1,000 episodes, I didn't want it to be literally a full production for every single one. So I was going, how can I streamline this? And one of the things I love about remote recording, you can access anyone in the world. Maybe someone doesn't want to fly. Maybe someone doesn't want to travel. Maybe someone doesn't speak on stage. Maybe someone doesn't do this. Maybe you have access to someone who normally doesn't even do interviews, and they're willing to do it for you because you have access to them, relationship, and they're willing to do it remotely. Can you imagine? And I just use Oprah because everyone seems to like her. She's cool. She's done nice stuff.
Sure.
But imagine saying, I can have Oprah on the show, and she goes, well, I'll do it remotely. And you say, well, I only take people into the studio. Are you really going to do that? And from a production standpoint, you also can speed things up. You can crank through 5, 10, 15 episodes in, I'll say, a week. But I know people who have done it in a day, depending on if it's audio, video, how long it is. Don't worry about the details. But the fact is, you can go faster. And from a business standpoint, that's what you want to do. Would you rather have 10 really, really great interviews or 100 that are awesome that everyone loves? And they're still good, And they probably are great because after doing 100 interviews, you will get better. But some people confuse it with producing a TV show or a movie where everything has to be dialed in and you get that one shot. This is ongoing. So I love the fact that you're focusing on the remote side of stuff. What's another benefit you would say is you get from remote?
Yeah, well, thank you, because that's it's definitely what we thought as well. And even though I would never say that, there's certainly some advantages to having it happen in person, but the whole goal with Squadcast is to make it feel as close to real life as possible. So I think that's one of the things that we're also trying to deliver, is that the video isn't recorded now, but we felt like the video element for the conversation was very important so that you can build the rapport with your guests. Like, there's a very
100%.
interesting relationship that kind of gets started and built when you're trying to interview a guest, because a lot of time there's some work in the pre-interview to schedule and plan the interview with them. So there's that relationship that's being nurtured there. And then you actually have the interview. And like we discussed before we hit record, is that, and it's something that we encourage our guests to do, or customers rather, is to give yourself a little buffer time to connect with that guest and make sure that everyone's on the same page as far as the interview goes, and that you want to cover all the appropriate topics, exclude some of the stuff that they don't want to talk about or aren't comfortable with talking about. But it's a great opportunity to build the relationship with them. And then of course you're having the real conversation, which again has its own wonderful benefits. And then after that, we encourage to keep the relationship going. So I think that's one of the things that was a phenomenal surprise to us, was like how special the podcasting community is, and how great it is for building relationships, and how a lot of people, they're so excited and willing to come on your show and give them an hour of your time. And sometimes it's easier to get that than 15 minutes of coffee. So it's a great relationship builder, in addition to the benefits of building an audience and having these people that are, looking to you for expertise or for this content that they just crave so deeply. So there's a few other benefits, but the relationship aspect overall is something that, makes a lot of sense now that I've seen it develop. But as an outsider, it wasn't something that I really understood of totally.
Yeah, I equate it to the tip of the iceberg because before this, most people go, oh, you have a podcast. I listen to podcasts, and they think it's like, oh, you just record audio. And it's like, that's like the end product. But there has been so many episodes where we have such a good pre-chat. One of my clients, I will say now, when I didn't even know him, and we were talking about, what's coming up, because I always ask everyone, what name, pronounce your name, how would you like it read professionally? And I decided as the standard, we're going to use the professional name on all the stuff, even if they go by the other one, just because, it's continuity. You don't want to be switching it all over the place. That's like a marketing thing.
Yeah.
But then I always say, is there anything that's coming out in, in my case, 60 to 90 days from now, because I'm usually 12 to 14 weeks out from the time I record it to when it actually gets published, premiered, whatever you say. And, he found out I do business book publishing, and he's like, oh my gosh, you can help me with my book. I want to do it. And I was looking at the clock going, we should probably start the episode. And he was like on cloud 9, level 14. And I'm like, let me just do my thing so we can record the episode. And I got the vibe he was wanting to do the book more than the episode. We did the episode. It was a great one. We also published the book. In 8 weeks, he was thrilled about that. And then it was interesting, and I'll say this as the producer and host, you can also do what you want with the order of episodes. Some people think, oh no, something's out of order. So switch it.
Yeah.
So I just happened to have his episode drop the day after the book came out.
Ooh, good one.
And he just happened to talk about the book as it was, as if it was done in advance. So, people look at stuff and go, oh, you record the episode. I go, there's about 359 other degrees, 360. Yeah, that's a full circle. 359 other degrees about what's happening, and it's like, oh yeah, and we get an episode out of it. That's kind of how I feel with all the great people I've met at different events and, even through the show.
That's a great example of it. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. It's just, again, not something that you necessarily think about, but I've heard countless stories similar to yours, and it just how it happened organically, right? Like that was not probably your intention, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And I'm sure you have other great examples of stuff just kind of happening organically that you had no idea about, but it wouldn't be possible without a podcast.
Yeah, countless. And I like what you said about the coffee, because when someone's like, hey, I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
Because it's like, did you read one of the books? I have 5 books. I have all these trainings. I've got all these episodes. I got all these other interviews. It's like, I could probably do a 24/7 week of just content that you really don't need to ask me simple questions. And I always want to help people, but it's like, I only got so much time with, stuff that's going on. But it's like, whenever it's a podcast episode, whether someone wants to interview me or I interview them, it's always like a high level conversation. I know it's not a waste of time. You feel the same way?
I absolutely do. And sometimes I'll go into these interviews with guests that maybe we haven't built up like a strong relationship with. So most of the time, because we get to work with podcasters so intimately, it's pretty easy to find guests, or a lot of these people we meet at events and they want to come on our show. We want them on. It's pretty fun and easy to get them booked. But there are times where people reach out and, we'll have like a pre-call and all that stuff and try to figure out, okay, well, how's this person, what's the vibe we're getting and where are we going to take this interview? But a lot of times those are the best when we do actually record, because we have no idea where it's going to take us. And we just are kind of along for the ride. And a lot of times Zach and I, when we wrap the interview and kind of have a debrief, we're just like, holy cow, can you believe that? Like, it's just so much more. And it's really our job to kind of find those points and bring it out, but we're just really scratching our own itch. And, hopefully the listeners are just as excited and enjoying the journey as we are. But, we think some of these people that we're more confident about is the people that we know or have a longer relationship with. But oftentimes it's the people that we go in with less expectations or less thinking that we know what the story is here. And they kind of just bring out something that just, we see them light up. That's what we do like about the video in Squadcast, and why we felt it was so important to see those moments where someone lights up. And that's the time to, it's hard to describe, but when you're in the interview, you can kind of feel it. And that's when you start to dig a little bit deeper and maybe go off script, but really explore what it is why they're lighting up. And that's just, it makes it more fun. But again, it's not something that we always went into knowing. It's just kind of something you figure out, just getting in reps and interacting with multiple people.
Yeah, I'm smiling because you say sometimes when you go off script. I'm like, yeah, every episode, at least for my show.
It's the best. We made the mistake of really trying to, because it's an interview show, we wanted to ask these questions and make sure that it was just more regimented, if you will. And it just wasn't fun, and it didn't come off as fun to our listeners, I imagine. And those were the early days, and that's okay, because a lot of times in podcasting, your first few episodes you're probably not going to like, but it's always fun to listen back to.
First few dozen, right?
Yeah. Well said. First few dozen, maybe 100. I don't know, but you will get better. So that is certainly true for us. And now we are much more free flowing. And of course we have an outline. We do our research and stuff like that, 'cause that's very important. But, giving yourself that opportunity to, be free flowing and flexible with where the conversation goes. We've had enough to know now that it can go anywhere. And those are usually the best.
Yeah, I remember the first dozen or so, and the screen I'm looking at you on right now, I remember having to go just glance down to the left, and it was like, okay, question 6, we should be asking. And the one time, I don't know if it was 10, 11, 12, I'm sure we could figure it out, but it was, the paper fell. I didn't have the setup I have now, and I literally had a sheet of paper I was reading it off of, and it fell, and I'm like, The whole show is shot now. What am I going to do? And it's like, hello, you've done this at least 8, 9, 10, 11 times on top of the 3,000 you've done on your own.
Wow.
And it was like, oh, I probably know this question. Oh, here's the question. I was like, oh my gosh, I know it. I have a real show now. And now it's just ludicrous to think like, I mean, I can do it in my sleep now, but those questions, I got to think my first guest, Tony, he's like, I'm excited to come on. Can you send me the questions? I go, absolutely. So I made some questions and emailed them later that night because it was the first episode. I'm like, what the heck are the questions? Oh, that might be good for an interview show. I mean, you just got to keep running with the thing. You can't get so, I mean, everyone looks at the talk show host, Johnny Carson, Letterman, Larry King, Kimmel, the funny guy. I really like that. Fallon. It's like these people have been doing it for tens of decades. I mean, that's what decades are, but tens of years. They're doing it for decades, a long time. And it's like we're comparing our worst to their best. And it's like, oh no, I messed up one thing. It's like, relax, do another one, do another one. So
that's the beauty of having recorded content too, is that you can kind of
go back. Yeah. Watch your own game footage, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it sounds like you're really enjoying podcasting now. And I think you're a great guest. I can tell you that already. And we're not even done. But I want to know, how did you get started with this? Because you didn't start in podcasting, did you?
Definitely did not.
You said something I picked up on. I made a note of it. You probably saw me writing. Just thankful for a good memory. You said, Zach reached out to me. So what do you do versus what he does? And what was your transition like from your prior career?
Yeah. So my background is, and I've always had an interest in business and finance, and just always saw that as being my career, whatever job I was doing. That's where my kind of my compass was taking me. And I guess it came down to, I wanted to know how to manage money, because I felt like no matter where I was at in life, whether while I was in college, I was a food server, so waiting tables. So I figured, hey, even if I'm waiting tables for the rest of my life or doing something that's, hopefully more money, knowing how to manage that money will be extremely important and a skill that I'll have to use for the rest of my life. So I've always 100%. Kind of had an interest. Yeah, I've always had an interest in personal finance. And like, if I can manage my money better, I'll be better off whether I have $1 or $1 million. So I went to college and double majored in accounting and finance. A lot of it was also because I needed to find a job straight out of college to pay my bills, pay college tuition and stuff like that, or student loans rather. So accounting was a good option because they're hiring a lot. Working for accounting firms, they're almost always looking for new meat, if you will. And it's a decent paying salary right out of college, and the work experience and exposure to a bunch of different businesses right out of the gate was very exciting and interesting to me. And also the job had a little bit of traveling, which I didn't get to travel a lot growing up. So that was also something that sounded exciting to me. So I started my career at an accounting firm right out of college. And, I really liked it. I'm really grateful for that experience. It really gave me a lot of exposure to different business industries, different executives, founders. And I think that's where my excitement for business and specifically entrepreneurship really started to build, because I started to interact and engage with these people on a daily basis, even though I was, straight out of college, and just seeing like, they're not that different than me. Yeah, sure, they're older and been in the game longer, but like, when I heard their origin story, I thought, well, I think I can do that too. So I just started like having this urge and desire to do something more independent, more creative, more entrepreneurial, and just also realizing that even though I was kind of climbing the corporate pyramid and saw a path to a good life, I just didn't. It felt like it wasn't going to be enough, and I needed to, at least at minimum, mark the what if question off my out of my head, which is, what if you started a business? What if you were building something from the ground up? Like, could you do it? How would that work? So I kind of had started financially and mentally preparing myself to make a more a jump to something more entrepreneurial and independent. And so what was really neat for me was, as I'm doing this journey on my own, apparently Zach is doing the same thing, just in a little bit of a different way. So in the fall of 2016, he called me, and we're high school friends. So, known each other for a long time. I know his family, him and his brother, who are super tight, is also a good friend of mine. So, great. We have a great relationship, but we did go kind of our separate paths when it came to college and our careers after that. He went more of the, software engineering, technology route. He's super into technology, always looking at the newest, latest and greatest kind of thing. So when he approached me about this idea that became Squadcast, I was already super excited because I had been kind of looking for something like this to really put all my attention and focus into. And so when it was about podcasting, that also wasn't difficult to get excited about, because I had already experienced it as a listener and understood that, like, I don't understand why podcasting is not bigger. I think it will become bigger. And if that's one wave that we're going to ride, then I think we can help out. One of the other waves that I didn't think was as intentional was that this whole remote work, remote collaboration thing was going to be another wave that we were riding. And I think we were less aware of that or intentional about that, because him and I had already had experience at our previous careers working remotely. So that wasn't like a new thing to us. We just kind of thought, well, the world's going to move to collaborating and working more remotely. Podcasters are going to want those tools as well, especially as podcasting grows and develops. So it was just kind of like we saw ourselves kind of sitting at that intersection and riding both of those waves, which we're seeing more and more people doing.
Yeah, I've noticed even since I started, everyone's like, oh, you've been doing this so long. And I go, there's people been doing this 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I haven't been doing it that long in comparison.
Sure.
But it's fun to look back and go, yeah, I'm no longer in launch mode. I'm not in startup. I'm not even in the first 100 episode mode, and, or 200 for that matter. And it's just fun to look back and go, wow, it really is fun to do, and it's easy to grow. And I have been encouraging more people to do it. Here's the irony. My team and I were actually producing some episodes and shows for other people's shows prior to me even launching one. I just wasn't ready. We had the expertise, we had the knowledge, we'd been doing it for hundreds of clients before, and it just clicked. And now that I see behind the scenes, I'm like, this is crazy fun. There's some of the greatest people in the world here. And like you were talking about earlier, the relationships you make, you can get business from it, if that's your intent. But if not, it's even easier, truthfully. And the people that they're telling me the stories of like what it's meant to them and allowed them to do, whether it's a dramatic increase in business or, they just got to live out their dream or their goal. Maybe you always wanted to have a radio station and it was this big thing. And then 10 years ago you go, maybe I don't need a radio station. I can have my own radio station or television station. I mean, those are cheap. Just buy one of those every week. And then YouTube comes out. And everything is so changing. And it's interesting to see how you can live your dreams the way you want and do it on your own terms. That's what was huge for me. The whole number one reason I went full-time in business in 2008 was just to control my calendar. I hated missing family stuff, and especially for work, stocking shelves or working at Wendy's. Like, no one's dying over this. Like, grande rojo papas fritas. Like, yes, one more large fry. Great. Made a difference in this person's life. And I don't regret any of it, but I also go, there's a lot more inside of me that we have to be going for. So tell me about one of the biggest transformations you can think of that you've been able to experience with, the people you've helped that are using your platform.
Yeah, I think I just think it always comes down to patience, but specifically with our customers and podcasters who we get the opportunity to serve and engage with every day. It's awesome because, like, podcasters talk for a living, so they're really good at telling us what they think, but especially in the early days, it was really tough hearing some of the harsh and critical feedback that they were really good about providing, since they're good at talking and comfortable talking, and certainly had abilities to, given that our platform is a recording device, so they could, use our platform to record what they thought and send it to us. And getting over that initial like ego hit, or just feeling like, oh man, we're screwing up, or we're making people upset, because we definitely don't want to make people upset. That never feels good. But learning that, like, the customer is always right. I don't believe that in the literal sense, but I do believe that in the spirit of it, there's always something to learn from your customers. And so I think just trying to get over the negative stuff, whether and how that made me feel or how it made us feel, and just kind of trying to peel it back to understand, what can we learn from this? How can we make it better? And then learning that the people that were the most critical were oftentimes the people that wanted this to work the most. So if we could turn that around, they ended up being the most passionate people and the biggest fans of Squadcast. And so again, it's not something that was intuitive at first, but when we started to just get over that feeling of whatever it was, whether, shame, embarrassment, whatever, hurting people, making people upset, getting over that and learning from it, and then letting them know, like, hey, we're listening, we're taking this seriously, and then getting to show that and kind of celebrate that. So one of the things we would do was, whenever we'd have like a product update, we would describe to our customers what that product update was and why we added it. So a lot of times we would say, hey, this person said that they experienced this issue with how the calendar scheduled. So we went back to the lab and fixed it, and here's what we think. And we want to give them, we want to thank them. And it just started making those relationships really sticky, where, it was really easy at first for us to just kind of write them off and just say, oh, they're a jerk, I don't like the way that they're talking to us. And sometimes we had that right. Like, they weren't exactly pleasant, but there was still a great opportunity.
Mildly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it sounds like, at least, but like, I understand why we, felt that way, and it would have been easy to just cut ties. But really learning that that's an opportunity to make super fans is something that is a huge learning experience for us, and something that we always try to tell people that are, fellow business owners, that your biggest critics oftentimes can be your biggest fans. It's not always true. Sometimes I'm not saying you do this every time, but it's been repeatable enough to say that it's worth the initial effort. And not everyone's ended up successful like that, but most of them have.
Yeah, I've had clients where I just straight up, I'm like, I need to fire them, because no one should be treated this way. No one on my team deserves to be treated this way.
Absolutely.
And then I actually I developed a platform to build WordPress websites automatically in a couple of minutes. And I'd never done software before, but I had this idea, and the entrepreneur in me was like, you can do this, you'll figure it out. You always do. Dad always encouraged me of that. And I'll tell you, the first time I opened a support desk, I was like, because I'm generally nice. Even if I'm upset, I flat out I'm like fuming on the phone, and I'm like, I appreciate your help. I know this has nothing to do with you. I am not happy. If I could speak to a manager, this has nothing to do with, you know what I mean? Some people just go off on whoever they're talking about, and it's like, they're just trying to help. They don't know who you are. They don't know the situation. So I always try to be nice even when I am upset. But some people do not have that, like, I don't know, common sense or empathy or whatever. And there's some support tickets I've seen for my software, and I'm like, should we get rid of them? Like, what do you think? And it's like, if it's one or two times, but when it's every day, all day for a month and a half, it's like, this is on me. I let them in.
Yeah.
Oops.
And unfortunately, that's certainly happened, and very true. So I don't want to come across like saying you do that for everybody, but I think I'm grateful for my training in my food service days, because
Oh yeah.
it's very similar, where you're standing in front of a customer at their table and they're upset that what they got served wasn't what they wanted for whatever reason. And it was my job to kind of figure out that resolution. And so, yeah, so I think it kind of helps build that thick skin. But yeah, customer support,
But reading
it's a
those
tough one.
reviews are priceless. Same thing I tell
Absolutely.
my authors. I go, don't skip over your YouTube comments or your Amazon reviews for
Mm-hmm.
the book, or if you have a product on there. I mean, those things, they can be the funniest things in the world. I don't think there's anything funnier you could do than watch a comedic video and read the YouTube comments, because people just, they're hilarious. Better than watching a comedy special, and there's some good ones out there. But there's also truth in it, because
Yeah,
I remember hearing about the difference between acting and comedy, and one is selling the eye, and the one is selling a lie, acting. The other one is telling the truth, comedy. And
that's
it's
true.
like, that's funny, but they're also being serious. Like, they're probably telling their therapist the same thing too. It's the same. So I take all that stuff to heart. I love comments. I love feedback. And, you know, I love the humor. I appreciate the humor, but I don't just glaze over and go, oh, that's funny. I'm like, okay, what are they meaning here? And, if you can reach out and talk to them even further, it's even better. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
We
no,
got one
totally.
more thing to do before we thank the sponsor and go to the Imperfect Action round. And I'm excited to unveil it to you.
Hey.
It's the, what do I call this thing? The wheel of whatever. I always have a randomized question. See all of them right there?
Yep.
And it always lands on the right one. And I know what I want to ask you
Oh,
once
it
it
does, huh?
stops.
The game is rigged, huh?
I was going to put stuff on there originally, but then it worked more in my favor to just keep it off. So we'll see what happens. The show's changing, and it's stopping here. Who is someone you would love to have on your show?
Whew. I mean, I think I don't. I think Joe Rogan, just because he kind of got the podcasting journey started for both of us. It's not my favorite show anymore, but that's how I got introduced to podcasting. So that's definitely the first that comes to mind. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of also awesome podcasters that we would love to have. And, we're going to have Pat Flynn on and Jordan Harbinger on pretty soon. And we're fortunate enough to have them as advisors to Squadcast. But those are people that we really look up to in the podcasting space, that have really done a lot for podcasting and podcasters. But, the Joe Rogan one would be special. Not that I expect him to do our show just because he's doesn't do anybody's show, but I think it would be cool just because, to deny that the impact that he's had on Squadcast I think would be incorrect.
Excellent. Love the honesty. That's all I ever ask for. And we're going to go to the sponsor and Imperfect Action on with that. Thank you. Spare change? How's that going to make a difference? I know that's what I thought before I started investing with Acorns. Throwing change in a jar is not very leverage and time consuming, but what about all the transactions you don't use cash for? Like majority? Acorns not only invest your spare change automatically with roundups, it also lets you add a preset amount to each transaction regardless. It's pretty inspiring to see how quickly and easily you can end up with a pile of cash instead of a pile of receipts. Get started simply and easily today at eainterviews.com/acorns. Once again, that's eainterviews.com/acorns. And we are back with the Imperfect Action round. Rock, are you ready to take Imperfect Action?
Let's go.
First question, what is the 60-second answers? What is the fastest path to the profits?
Fastest path to the profits. Don't worry about it. Just start today, keep working, show up every day, and you'd be surprised what happens when you start to accumulate time.
Excellent. Number 2, what is the biggest problem you see your prospects making and fastest way for them to fix it?
Again, it's a matter of focus. I think focusing on too many things that aren't going to get you to your goals. So if you want to start a podcast, it's not going to be, again, the microphone, the headphones, even the software. It's going to be you starting and creating that. And again, time is going to be, podcasting rewards consistency, persistence. So just getting started and getting behind that mic is the best way to do it.
Excellent. Number 3, what is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
Just not being afraid to talk to them, always talking to them, always kind of rising above your initial instincts to, you know, discount what they're saying or think about why they're incorrect or why what they're saying is wrong, because there is probably some stuff that they aren't aware of. But just talking to people, it has a wonderful impact on them.
It's one of my favorite things to do. Honest to God communication and just feedback.
And I love it too. So yeah, it comes natural to me, I think, more than other people, but 100%, it's important.
Yeah, when people are like, we're going to install a bot in an email, and I'm like, you're toast already. Don't cool, awesome. Let me know how it goes. I've also learned not to argue. If someone's going to do something, they're going to do it. It's like, I've always wanted the best for people, and it just hurt me to know what that was going to happen for them. And I'm like, now I'm cool. Wish you the best.
Yeah.
Pray for them. All right, books. What are some good books you could recommend? And please mention the one.
Yeah. So like we were talking about earlier, it's one called The Mom Test. Not my favorite name for the book, but it's still a good book nonetheless. And it's really about how to talk to your customers and it really gives good actionable strategies and tactics on how to deal with it, especially when you're like first testing an idea, but it even goes beyond that when you're trying to, you're past the idea phase and you do actually have a product, how to interact with customers that way too. It's really short, straight to the point, but it's had a great impact on how I talk and interact with customers on a daily basis.
Any others?
Yeah. So I think going with that theme of stuff that's short, but actionable, because that's what's really important to me is like, there's a lot of hats that I need to wear as a founder that I'm definitely not capable of immediately, but using books, podcasts, all that stuff to kind of level my knowledge and skills up. So Say the Right Thing is another one that's very similar, just how to like be very precise with language and communication when you're interacting with people. And it could be used for bad intentions, if you will, but Jedi mind tricks. But for me, it's really just how to make sure that what I'm saying is clear and I want my words to impact people the right way. And too often words based on just choices or how we say them can impact people in an unintended way. So just learning how to communicate better.
150%. One of my favorites that I've mentioned before is hung by the tongue. And people wonder why they get in trouble all the time. It's like, you generally divulge all this stuff. You're literally hanging yourself with what you say. No one knows anything unless you tell them. What fuel are you giving them? Same thing You're saying with the words. It's like what you say to your customers and clients, and it shouldn't be, just so I can manipulate them into buying more. It's like, no, think about it. How can you help people? If you know that certain words trigger them, use a different one. You have a thesaurus, like, it's a whole other thing, but I'm glad you mentioned that, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you for the book recommendation, because I haven't heard that one, but that is a phenomenal title.
It's, I've done a lot myself on the words and speech, and yeah, it's interesting, one word, and it's like, it could be literally the matter of life or death.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate everything you shared. Where would you like everyone to learn more at?
Yeah. So if you head over to our website at squadcast.fm, you can learn more about the company, the product, but then also just learn how to be a better podcaster. So we have a lot of free downloadable resources on specifically when it comes to recording your podcast remotely. So head over to squadcast.fm and we can help you out there and say hi to us and the team. We'll be happy to greet you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mario.
All right, Expert Authority World. It was another great episode today. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, and God bless.